Good evening, I'm Kathy Lewis. Tonight, a chat with our editorial roundtable. Every month or so, we talk about what's going on with some of the folks who follow the news, either as their vocation or their avocation. And joining us tonight, Brenda Andrews, who's the president and publisher of the New Journal and Guide newspaper. Kimball Payne is with us as well. He's a reporter with the Daily Press, and you can read his work at shadplank.com. Sean Holohan is a Democratic blogger and president of the Virginia Young Democrats. And Pat Murphy is a conservative blogger and political consultant. Thanks to all of you for being with us tonight. Good to see you all. Well, there's no shortage of things going on, but I suppose, gosh, it's hard to know where to get started. We've got this national issue with $1 trillion figures floating around, and I don't know if you know what $1 trillion looks like. It's a pretty amazing thing. But we've got this national issue that we're dealing with, and we're dealing as well at the local level and at the state level with a lot of the outcomes of that. Pat Murphy, you've done a lot of writing about money and following it.
I don't think that there's any question that there's been a lack of regulation. Not so much a lack of regulation, but a lack of people doing their job with the regulation. I think that we're not doing a good job in Congress watching money. We're not doing a good job in the state of watching the money, and down to the local level of watching money.
And Brenda Andrews, you've been following President Obama's administration in the New Journal and Guide, and one of the things that he's taken some criticism for is the size of this plan and the amount of money that government is going to wind up investing in recovery.
Well, we're going to have to do something. We're not in this fix we're in overnight. This is something that has been going on for a long time. And what Obama has facing him is overcoming it in as short a time as possible. And he is getting some heat for that, but it's going to take some money. That's the bottom line, unfortunately, but that's the bottom line.
So as we think about this issue of money against another backdrop, which is interesting this time of year, when we look at the fact that we have fall statewide elections, and all the candidates are talking a lot about money as well. Lots of proposals on the table. You've been following a lot of them, Kimball Payne, in the Shadplank.
It's all jobs right now. I mean, that's the only thing people want to hear, and that's the only thing the candidates want to talk about. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're Republican or Democrat. I mean, they're all talking about ways to create jobs, green jobs, new energy. I mean, anything that will facilitate more Virginians being employed.
Do you notice, what differences do you notice among the different proposals that you've heard so far?
Well,
are there a lot of substantive differences?
I mean, you're getting, I think what you're seeing right now is an interesting dynamic because McDonnell is by himself. So McDonnell is out there.
Bob McDonnell, the Republican presumptive nominee.
Exactly, is out there by himself. So he's working his kickoff tour and not getting much of heat. On the other side, you've got Terry McAuliffe and Brian Moran, who are each doing rollouts of various proposals from, small business to minority business to, the film industry. I mean, they're rolling out different things, really getting aggressive. Meanwhile, Creed Eads is kind of sitting back, the other Democrat, and allowing them to battle it out and working his game out west. So, I mean, it's not, I really don't think you can stack up these four guys and say these are exactly how they view things on different levels. I mean, we're talking about four guys who are running very different campaigns at this point.
And that's what's so interesting about it, because these three Democrats that are running these campaigns now, of course, this will all be decided in June. Sean Holohan, welcome to our panel, by the way. Good to have you with us. How tough is this for Democrats to have three candidates, many would say are pretty good candidates, kind of battling it out? Are you concerned that at the end of the day they'll be so bruised by that battle they won't have what it takes to hit the fall?
No, I think we saw in 06 with the Harris Miller versus Jim Webb primary. Harris Miller represented what, people knew him. He'd been a member of Democratic politics in Virginia for many years. Jim Webb sort of came out of nowhere. People didn't trust who he was. They didn't know where he was coming from. And there was a very hard-fought, bruising primary. But people came together, and of course Jim Webb won. This year we've got two guys whom everyone in Virginia Democratic politics know, State Senator Creed Eads and former Delegate Brian Moran. We all know these guys. We love these guys. And here comes Terry McAuliffe, whom everyone knows on the national level, and he's out here talking about jobs, like Kimball was saying, and he's got some of these great ideas, and everyone knows that he can pull in money to help out our House of Delegates races. So, he is an attractive candidate. And it is very tough. I mean,
Yeah.
on the level, I'd say you go to any region and people seem to be split. And here in Hampton Roads, it seems like 1/3, 1/3, 1/3.
Well, I'm split depending on the time on who I think is going to be able to pull something out. And I think it's important to step back and remember that you've got some big-time Democrats that are staying out of this spat and waiting to get at Bob McDonnell.
Right.
You've got Governor Kane, you've got Mark Warner, you've got Jim Webb standing on the sidelines, also kind of playing a little bit of ref. You know, I think if they see things going over the line and people getting way too nasty, you're going to see these folks step in and say, hey, Bob McDonnell is still the opponent. So, I mean, some of this is healthy. You've got to have challenges. You want these guys to be laying out plans. You don't want someone to be anointed. I mean, granted, Bob McDonnell has been setting up the stage for this for a long time, but I don't think the Democrats come out down anything just because they're having a little bit of, you know, an internecine.
It's so interesting with the, go ahead, with the primary situation too. You've got all this duking it out now. By the time people really get interested in the race, it'll be Labor Day. That decision will, you know what I mean?
What's so great about this, and we were talking about this earlier, is the fact that it almost mirrors the Obama and Hillary primary, where all the names in the papers and the press are McAuliffe, Moran, and Deeds.
Right.
And, you know, you'll hear something about McDonnell, about having a kickoff, but it's usually on page A7 or, you know, if it's a local paper, B17, whatever. And the names of the Democratic candidates are always out there every single day. Their names are out there because they're coming out with an endorsement.
Advantage.
Absolutely,
Yep.
because their names are constantly in the paper. I mean, we've always said in politics, it takes someone to hear someone's name about 10 times before it finally sinks in.
Yeah.
So when people are really starting to pay attention, they're going to know who our Democratic guys are. They're not going to know so much who this guy is running for Republican.
Well, attention is a dynamic in this race because with a June 9th primary, I've been to events with some of these candidates and literally heard people ask, when's this primary? And they say June, and they say, 09? And I'm thinking, whoa.
Yeah.
And you see the polling, it comes out 45% undecided, and I don't think that's because they haven't heard, the real insiders and the real wonks haven't heard enough out of the three Democrats. I think that's because the casual voter just went through an 18-month presidential election. I mean, on average, how many political stories do you think the average person consumes in 1 week?
Right.
And do you think the gubernatorial election is going to be able to break through that federal news cycle that's tossing around $787 billion? I mean, which story are you going to read?
Right.
The one about $787 billion.
This is all going to be won or lost at the grassroots level. And I noticed Deeds, really heavy duty at the grassroots level. He's operating under the radar. I do think that McDonnell has a chance of losing at the grassroots level. This whole deal with Jeff Frederick, the chairman.
Let's talk a little bit about that. Jeff Frederick is a delegate from Northern Virginia who represents sort of the Loudon Manassas area. He's the
chairman of the
state Republican Party.
And there's a big brouhaha. Part of the party's upset with him.
Quite a lot of the party's upset.
But one of the most unbelievable
Fair
things I've seen in Virginia politics, and thank goodness it happens often in Virginia politics, is that McDonnell took a side in this. Now, Frederick represents, I think, what we could agree is probably the right wing of the party. That's the grassroots. That's the passion of the party. That's the people that go out and work the polls.
Volunteers.
Frederick has taken a position, or McDonnell has taken a position against Frederick, alienating that right wing of the party. If McDonnell does not have every single Republican plus some independents, he's not going to make it. It doesn't matter who the Democratic nominee is going to be, they're going to win. He has alienated that whole right wing of the party at this point, and he didn't have to do it.
And you're talking about a delegate who isn't dead yet. I mean, a lot of people are saying Jeff Frederick is a dead man walking, but you need 75% of this voting block of the GOP to throw him out, this governing body, which is 58
and they will vote
votes
on
out
that.
of
We're on Friday night. On Saturday, they're going to tomorrow. They're going to be voting on that.
Say they have the numbers. No one knows what's going to happen in this thing.
And if Frederick can flip one person, then he survives.
Yeah.
So that's where the drama is going to be this weekend.
Well, but not only is that the drama,
but up to the election.
And McDonnell's got to be sweating, because if Frederick survives, you survive with a candidate who came out against a party chairman but wasn't powerful enough to knock off that party chairman. And if I was the Democrats, we just talked about this a second ago, if I was the Democrats, I would hang Jeff Frederick around Bob McDonnell's neck if he survives. Because every commercial should be, you know, Bob McDonnell has great plans for Virginia, but he couldn't even get Jeff Frederick off the steering wheel. I mean, it is trouble.
Yeah, he's done a good job running away from his more conservative base. I mean, he was a delegate from Virginia Beach. You know, he started his career out with Regent University. A lot of people from this area know Bob McDonnell as a guy, very conservative delegate. Now, he's running for statewide office, and he's sort of running away from that right-wing base. Well, if Jeff Frederick is still around, and they're trying to get rid of him because Jeff Frederick represents the, the worst, the anti-Darwin base of the party. That is something you can certainly hang around
Let me just say
Bob
that
McDonnell's neck.
what I see happening in the Republican Party at the state level mirrors what's happening at the national level with Steele, Brush, and the rest of that whole searching for some kind of identity, because they were beat so badly in the last election, unexpectedly so. And so at the national level, they're getting their leadership, and it's filtering down into the state level.
I mean, you look at the folks who are, and it's a great point about the difference between the grassroots and the leadership. I mean, look at the leadership. All 5 of the state's GOP congressmen, all 6 of the state Republican leaders, most of the party's House of Delegate leaders, and Bob McDonnell all say he's got to go.
Yeah.
So tomorrow's the big day.
But the people that work the polls, that are part of that grassroots, that make it happen, and you can have the Chamber of Commerce and every member of the House of Delegates and all the elected representatives be for something, but if those people that work the polls and are the grassroots aren't for it, you lost your passion. You've lost your election.
This is going to mirror what happened when Jeff Frederick originally won the Republican advance. You had ex-Lieutenant Governor Hager as the party chair, and you had all this, leadership behind him, and what happened? The grassroots, the base of the party came up and gave Jeff Frederick the leadership.
Yeah.
So the same thing may very well happen again this weekend.
And it's interesting to note, too, that he had said when he ran that if he were the state chairman that he would not run for his House of Delegates seat again.
Yeah.
But now he's doing a draft program for his wife to run for the seat. Is that right?
She's knocking on doors.
She's knocking on doors right now.
Right.
All right. So we'll see what happens. That's Amy Frederick, and it's sort of a draft Amy campaign, I guess.
Well, the old saying, all politics are local, is very true. It's true in Virginia. You can have all the elected and the anointed be for something, but if those people that knock on doors, that hand out flyers, that work the polls are not for it, it's done.
So, Kimball, are we seeing, I mean, this is interesting because now in a couple of different cases, we're seeing a real division between, within one party, or between one and another. And I remember in the wake of the presidential campaign, you and Quentin Kidd and a bunch of folks were sitting here saying, don't think just because Barack Obama won the White House and we have 2 Democratic U.S. senators, do not believe for 1 minute that means that Virginia is a slam dunk or has changed.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a faulty comparison to compare the Republicans to the federal level to the state level, because I mean you've got those kind of party heads that are struggling at this point, but you still have majority leadership in the House of Delegates. You've got an increasingly active minority leadership in the Senate. I mean, those guys came together. When they lost the majority, they came together and worked together like people hadn't seen in a long, long time, working behind the scenes, being very aggressive, pushing their interests. So I think, the state Republican Party may not be, I mean, they're definitely reeling. They weren't happy to see Barack Obama win Virginia. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say that they're healthy as a horse, but I think you've still got a very powerful party that connects with a lot of people, connects on the state level, and the cycle that you see, how you pick federal, the American public always swings back. So you swing this way for the Democratic federal, you swing back for the Republican state.
What I've been saying all year long is if Kaine and Obama's numbers are still above 60%, we're going to do very well in the state. However, if the body politic of the nation is thinking that Obama's doing horribly, and that will reflect upon his DNC chair, outgoing Governor Tim Kaine, they will certainly not vote for a Democrat governor. So it all depends upon what those 2 guys are doing. I don't care who it is. If it's Creed Deeds, Terry McAuliffe, or Brian Moran, if those numbers are looking good for our top 2 guys, I'm feeling very good against Bob McDonnell.
Yeah.
And Brad Andrews, you're in the business of endorsements. I know you haven't endorsed yet.
No, we haven't endorsed anyone, but we're definitely leaning toward Terry McAuliffe.
And why is that?
I like his message, and I like the way he delivers it. He reminds me a lot of Mark Warner. He reminds me of, he definitely is a businessman. He's been in that arena for a long time, and I think that's what we need.
Sean Holohan, does that surprise you?
It doesn't. We, Young Democrats, we just had our big convention in UVA, and there was a lot of people there. We had all of our statewide speakers and Governor Kaine. And more and more people are turned on to this pro-business message. I mean, he does have a way of reaching out and having people listen to this idea of getting jobs. I mean, that's the whole thing. He has a very good message on jobs. But he still has to break through and get people to trust him.
Right.
The last poll that came out, Brian Moran was still ahead.
Yeah.
Because people don't know.
And Brian Moran's been at it a long time, as has Creed
time.
Eads.
As has Creed Eads, yeah.
He's a sleeper. I think people are writing off Creed Eads just because Moran and McAuliffe are grabbing headlines. But Deeds is sitting back. He is working west of Richmond in a way that none of the other candidates
and
are.
he's working Hampton Roads with the grassroots, door to door.
The thing is, if you look at the polling numbers, though, and I know I keep on talking about this poll, is he's not doing very well outside of Southwest Virginia. And the sheer population of Virginia is up 64 and 95.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you're not going to be able to get at least second in Northern Virginia, then you're done.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the House of Delegates, because, of course, that those elections are this fall. You've got some interesting developments in the fact that Ken Melvin says he's not going to run again. What do you think about that? Yeah, Judge Melvin.
Right.
Thank you so much.
Right.
Yeah,
That's a big loss.
Yeah.
His, you know, I've spent the last 3 years up in the General Assembly, and every time he gets up to speak, I mean, they, you know, showered him with all these wonderful things when the announcement was made he was going to retire.
Yeah.
Because it's absolutely true. When he stands up on the floor, people listen.
Yeah.
It's not
so
like.
Who comes in behind there?
I don't know. I was talking just Sunday with Delegate Alexander, who's the head of the Legislative Black Caucus, and he was also lamenting the fact that Ken Melvin won't be there and how popular and respected he was with his seniority. I don't know. I don't know. There are several people, you know, Robin Hawley certainly has the name.
Robin Hawley, the daughter of Portsmouth Mayor James Hawley.
Right. She has the name, but she doesn't have the experience. So I'm not absolutely sure.
That's what I've heard. I've heard that Mayor Hawley's daughter is the front runner. But then again, you know, we've got a lot of time.
Who knows? There's a lot of time between now and then.
Ken Melvin has had that seat for a long time.
And you got folks dropping. I mean, you had Frank Hall, you know, resign up in Richmond, who's been serving, you know, I think since 78, 79, maybe even further back. I mean, you've had a lot of, you shed a lot of incumbents. So, I mean, that tends to mix up the November races. But at this point, you know, people are still collecting petitions. And you can't worry about everyone who's picked up a packet because a lot of people pick up packets.
Those are due April 10th. But the Democrats have an opportunity to take the majority in the House.
Absolutely.
Yes.
That would give them the House, the Senate, which they took 2 years ago, and more than
redistricting,
likely, the redistricting.
That's the thing. If
they're
Democrats,
within striking distance now.
If we don't take it this year, we may not even be sniffing taking over the House until 10, 20 years. And with Delegate Clark Hogan from South Boston retiring, that may very well have been our magic 6 seat, with Ted Bennett, the old delegate who used to represent that district, coming back to run for it again.
So an important fall election.
A very, very important.
You'll have the money this time because the Senate is not running in this election in Virginia, so the money all goes to the House.
Exactly.
Speaking of money, I cannot have Pat Murphy at the table without asking a question about SPSA because, you know, Pat Murphy.
There needs to be a grand jury investigation into SPSA. $250 million in debt, no way out. Same 8 people have been making these decisions. The state auditor did a report that was damning of this agency. I know that in Virginia Beach they approached the state for a grand jury. They're now going to the Commonwealth's attorney in Virginia Beach to have a grand jury investigation. There needs to be some criminal prosecutions for this corrupt agency. The way they've mishandled this money is, I'm sorry, I'm just really upset about this. It is the poster child for why regional government does not work. Everybody has voted for self-interest, not for regional interest.
But in truth, there are other regional opportunities that have gone very well, and this was created, and I think you would acknowledge this, at a time when that was what needed to be created to satisfy the needs of the region. And the argument is, and I'm asking what you think about this.
I would disagree with that, but okay.
Fair enough. I'll let you do that. But do you think it's one of those situations where it was created at a time when it made sense, but then it just outgrew what the need was, or do you not buy that?
The cities have not done their job in controlling the people that go, for one. And secondly, it should have been privatized. There was Re-Energy from New York had offered to buy SPSA. They dismissed it without a public hearing. Why was this private company that said, we'll take care of all the debt, buy this and privatize it. Why wasn't there a public hearing held about this? There really needs to be a grand jury, and part of that grand jury, I think, will find where SPSA bought 47 acres of land in Suffolk at 10 times the assessed value. Who got that money? Was it someone associated with SPSA? I mean, that makes no sense why they paid several $1 million for a piece of land that was valued at about $75,000 and then could only use about 10% of it. There is some serious wrongdoing at SPSA, and there needs to be.
So you're calling for a grand jury investigation?
Absolutely.
All right. The other, and we just have a few moments left. We should have another hour. What can I tell you? Is this a business with port privatization? You have some very interesting proposals on the table that look at this great asset, which is the Virginia port, and say, gee, maybe if we put this in private hands, we might be able to get some more efficiencies at a time when the port is trying to be very competitive on the East Coast. What do we think about that?
I mean, it's going to be tempting. You're talking about a state government.
At a time when state government needs the money.
At a time when state government needs money, you dangle a very big carrot out in front of state government's nose. I mean, it is $8.9 billion over 60 years. I mean, it is very enticing. I continue to be, a skeptic on this, just because you're talking about an organization that gets $40 million in state subsidy a year that is suddenly going to be worth $8.9 billion when it gets turned over to a private company. Who's making the money in that deal, and why aren't the state taxpayers making that money?
Well, the state has no business being in private business. None. They shouldn't be selling liquor. They shouldn't be running a port. And the very fact that the Virginia Port Authority moved their marketing arm over to a private enterprise group so that they weren't subject to the Freedom of Information Act, and you know about this, they're buying $500 bottle of wines to give to clients. That's not where tax dollars should be going, especially in a time.
So are you arguing for fully privatizing?
Absolutely. Should be. So should the liquor stores. There's no reason the state should be in private enterprise.
John, how about you? You got a thought on that one?
Well, I agree with him on the ABC stories. But as far
John's just trying to figure out which of the three guys is going to get there. Then.
Well, the only thing the port is obviously it's a touchy subject, but you still, even with privatizing, you still have to get the regional cooperation on it. I mean, everyone wants
and lots of hurdles, lots of regulatory hurdles to jump through.
Right, there's tons of hurdles. I mean, we're only beginning to talk about this.
Yeah.
So, you still need Norfolk ports with it.
But it's an interesting conceptual question about, because there are some people who say, look, that is too valuable to the Commonwealth. If we turn loose of it, then we turn loose of a great asset.
And I tend to be on that side of the fence.
Yeah. Brenda Andrews, how about you?
Well, I agree with whatever has been said here. As I listen to the conversation, whether it's public or private, we have some real issues in this country, and they all stem from greed, whether it's greed at the state, national level, federal government, or public or private industries. We've lived in a culture for several decades where everything was about the money. And now we're seeing it. We're seeing it with the conversation we're having here. We're seeing it on the national level. We're seeing it in our banking industry, our mortgage industry, you name it. Yeah. We're seeing it.
Well, Brenda Andrews and Sean and Pat and Kimball, thank you so much for being with us tonight. We'll have to check big day tomorrow, though, so we'll check back with you from time to time. But thank you so much for being with us. And I'll be back in a moment with a final thought. This was a happy week in the Lewis household. Our beloved 18-year-old child got into the college of her dreams, bringing us, yay, to the end of that long and winding road to admission. Between record numbers of seniors graduating and an economy that isn't making the grade, college admissions are a real mixed bag this year, but depending on where you go, it could actually be a student's market. Applications at Johns Hopkins down 35%, Williams College down 20%. That means your chances are probably better than they've been before. But for the Ivies, it's more competitive than ever. Stanford and Harvard each admitted record lows of only 7% of those who applied. And that is just one of the reasons why I am so glad to live in Virginia. And I'd be glad to live in North Carolina, too, where our college choices are rich, varied, and relatively affordable. Consider Kiplinger's ranking of the best values in public education. 8 of the top 25 are in Virginia and North Carolina. UNC, UVA, William & Mary, University of Mary Washington, Virginia Tech, North Carolina State, JMU, UNC Wilmington, all in the top 25. Check out the Princeton Review's Top 10 Best Value Colleges of 2009. UVA, William & Mary, NC State, all in the top 10. You can check Forbes, U.S. News, or any of the other rankings of the nation's colleges, and you'll find more than our fair share of schools from North Carolina and Virginia. So when the legislatures debate college funding issues, we should all be paying attention, because one of our best products is public education, and we need it now more than ever. When she was 6 years old, I told my daughter that we were really lucky because all the colleges in the world were right here in Virginia. That was my crude effort to manage some expectations. Well, she grew up to discover that there was college life outside of the Commonwealth. She also quickly discovered another truth, that unless you're looking for something very specific, you can find almost everything you're looking for in Virginia and North Carolina schools. And so while the waiting game of the last few months has been anxious at times, the truth is that our child, like many, would have done fine at any of the 4 in-state colleges where she was accepted. But you have to pick one, and so it seems our daughter and our money will be going to the University of Virginia for the next 4 years, and in any economy, we consider that a very solid investment. Well, that's it for us on this edition of What Matters. Here's a look at what we have coming up. Lights, camera, action, hooray for Hollywood in Hampton Roads. We'll be talking about the big bucks enterprise that is motion picture and television, and it's coming right here to Virginia, right here to Hampton Roads, in fact. We'll also talk with Phil Shuquette, who is the former commissioner for the Virginia Department of Transportation. He's the one who's behind that public-private partnership to replace the Jordan Bridge. And if you're persuaded by the argument that human activity has an effect on the environment, you'll want to be with us in a few weeks when we'll talk about how to retrofit your home to minimize your impact on the earth. We'll talk with a homeowner and a home builder who are passionate about changing the way we build the places we call home. We have some other great shows coming up as well, and we'd love to send you a weekly e-bit to let you know what's going on. Our website is whatmatters.tv. That's where you can sign up for that e-bit. You can also visit us on Facebook. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time for another look at What Matters.